All right, let's unpack this. We're diving into something today that, well, if you really look, it seems to shape almost everything. About human experience, I mean. It's a pattern um, as old as life itself, really, but it goes way beyond just biology.
Yeah, much further.
We're talking about that fundamental dynamic, predator and prey. Not just lions and gazelles, but woven right into our history, our relationships, our systems, even how we think.
Deeply embedded.
Welcome to the deep dive. This particular exploration is built entirely from sources you provided, and they offer a pretty fascinating, sometimes honestly unsettling look at this phenomenon.
It can be unsettling, yeah.
What makes this unique, I think, is the core perspective. It comes from an AI's analysis. Quite objective.
Right, a very different viewpoint.
So our mission today, let's explore these sources together. We want to figure out how an AI sees something so, well, human, how that view maybe clashes with our own experience.
The contrast is key.
And how this dynamic just seems to pop up absolutely everywhere you look. And you know what, if anything, AI can tell us about navigating it all.
Or mitigating it, perhaps.
Exactly. Ready? Let's dive in.
Okay. So the sources, they start by framing this dynamic very, very broadly. They see predator and prey as this fundamental pattern impacting all humans.
Yeah, all humans. No exceptions.
It seems like it, regardless of, gender, age, culture, stage of life. And it's not just in obvious power struggles. It apparently influences history, biology, philosophy.
Wait, you said even math and physics? That sounds counterintuitive for something so primal.
It does, right. And that's the first kind of jolt you get from the AI perspective. We humans, we tend to think predator or prey, it's about malice or victimhood, conscious intent.
Yeah, it feels very moral, very emotional.
But the AI's core definition, according to these sources, is more about observed interaction patterns. It sees this dynamic, even in abstract areas like math, as being driven by things like power imbalances, resource acquisition, social influence, psychological manipulation, that sort of thing.
So it's not just like warfare or crime. It could be the subtle stuff, like in a relationship or how news is presented.
Precisely. But the key AI difference is the lens. It sees it as an observable, quantifiable pattern. It's analyzing the mechanics of how resources move, how risk is managed in a system.
Like an engineer looking at a machine.
Kind of, yeah. The sources call it a distributed system. These interactions happening everywhere, all the time with emergent properties. So big societal patterns bubble up from all these small interactions.
Okay.
And crucially, this AI analysis, it's not inherently tied to our human sense of right and wrong. It's just pattern recognition.
Okay, that distinction feels huge. Because for us, yeah, predator and prey instantly brings up feelings, good guys, bad guys.
Absolutely. Our understanding is deeply subjective, isn't it? Very emotional. Shaped by empathy or lack of it, our own histories, our culture's norms, our sense of justice.
We feel it.
We really do. We experience these roles, whether we're the one feeling vulnerable or the one exerting power or just watching it happen. And the consequences are profound, psychologically, emotionally. For us, the meaning is, well, it's existential, personal, tied to safety, dignity, survival.
And the AI is just looking at the gears turning.
Pretty much. Objective, data-driven. It's analyzing the how, the mechanisms of power, resource flow, manipulation tactics, and the outcomes. It sees meaning more as correlations, causal links leading to states like survival or wealth or suffering.
It doesn't feel the suffering.
No. It predicts and optimizes based on parameters it gets from the data.
Wow.
It doesn't moralize.
Wow. Okay, that's where it gets really interesting, doesn't it? Seeing that cold, analytical machine view on something so messy and human. So how widespread is this dynamic then? The sources say it's everywhere.
They really emphasize that, how it permeates, well, everything, far beyond literal hunting or fighting. It describes situations where individuals or groups benefit, often significantly, at the expense of others by using imbalances, power, resources, information, exploiting vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting, the sources do clarify it's not always about deliberate malice. Sometimes it's just harsh competition within a system. Unintended consequences, maybe.
Okay, right. So let's trace it. Where do the sources show this pattern emerging? Let's start with history, human history.
Looking back, yeah, the pattern seems undeniable. You see it in tribal warfare, the brutality of slavery, conquest, feudal systems, lords and serfs, that whole structure.
Colonialism.
Definitely. Colonial exploitation, big economic monopolies crushing smaller players. Even the rise and fall of empires can often be viewed through this lens as one group getting really good at leveraging power and resources to dominate others.
And fast forward to today, where's the dynamic now?
Still here, just maybe. The forms are more abstract sometimes. Systemic. We see it in extreme economic inequality. Corporate exploitation of labor sweatshops are a stark, pretty literal example.
Yeah.
Political manipulation, using, say, disinformation. Cybercrime is huge now, exploiting digital vulnerabilities. Social media bullying.
That feels very predator-prey.
It does, exploiting psychological weak points. And then you have financial stuff, predatory lending, pyramid schemes.
Right. Okay. And the future. The sources hinted at AI's role.
Yeah, it's presented as a real double-edged sword. There's the risk AI gets used for predation, super sophisticated scams, algorithms manipulating people based on precisely what they know makes us tick, our vulnerabilities.
It's a scary thought.
It is. Or the flip side is AI as a tool against it, used to optimize resource distribution more fairly, maybe, build transparent systems that are harder to exploit, identify predatory patterns before they do too much damage.
So AI could be the ultimate predator or maybe a powerful watchdog. What about our own bodies, biology? Sources mentioned genetics.
It's complex, obviously, but the sources know that genetics might play a part. Predispositions influencing behavior aggression, empathy levels, how much risk we take. These could nudge how someone interacts within these dynamics.
A nudge, not destiny.
Exactly. But maybe the most direct link is just our basic stress response, fight, flight, freeze. That's a fundamental prey reaction, isn't it? Hardwired. And the chronic stress from being in that vulnerable prey state, the sources say it has major long-term biological impacts. Immune system, mental health. It gets physically embedded.
Really gets under your skin, literally. How about philosophy? How have thinkers wrestled with this?
Well, philosophy tries to provide frameworks to understand it, maybe mitigate it. Moral philosophy dives right in justice, fairness, the ethics of exploitation. Is it ever okay for one person to gain from another's suffering?
Big questions.
Huge. Existentialism looks at the struggle for agency, for meaning, when you can feel like just an object consumed by bigger forces. In social contract theory, that's basically us trying to escape the raw state of nature, pure predator-prey, by setting up rules, laws, governments to protect the vulnerable, regulate power.
Trying to build guardrails. Okay, let's tackle the bit that first surprised me, physics and math. How does that connect?
Physics is maybe more metaphorical. Seeing the dynamic like systems in nature seeking equilibrium, often an unstable one, where one thing grows by consuming or displacing another until things shift again.
Okay, I can sort of see the system analogy, but the math, the sources had actual examples, conceptually at least.
Right. Math gives us tools to model these interactions abstractly. Things like Lotka-Volterra equations, game theory, network theory. They're used to analyze population dynamics, competitive strategies, how resources flow.
Like wealth distribution.
Exactly. Wealth distribution often follows these power laws, mathematically showing how a tiny percentage ends up with a huge share. The sources frame that pattern as a kind of consequence of economic predation.
And those simplified calculation ideas they mentioned. One factor showing predator resources going up based on efficiency in prey resources. The other showing prey resources going down based on vulnerability in the predator's presence. What's the big takeaway from being able to model it like that?
I think the key insight isn't just that you can put numbers on it, but that the mechanisms, the how of resource transfer, growth, decline, seem to follow underlying mathematical relationships. It reinforces that AI view. It's a quantifiable pattern, not just subjective human drama. It allows modeling, maybe even prediction.
Fascinating. So not just chaos, but underlying structures, and logic plays a role too.
Absolutely. Sources point out predators often use logic, sometimes sound, often flawed, manipulating reasoning to exploit biases or fallacies in others.
Weaponizing logic.
In a way. And the prey tries to use logic too, to argue for fairness, to escape. But their thinking is often clouded by the sheer emotional stress. Hard to think clearly under threat.
Makes sense. And this all feeds into our mindset, our belief systems.
Big time. For the predator side, sources describe patterns like narcissism, a real lack of empathy, entitlement and rationalization, survival of fittest, dehumanizing targets, that kind of thing.
And for the prey.
Fear, anxiety, maybe learned helplessness, trauma. It can shatter core beliefs about fairness, safety. But conversely, some find incredible resilience through faith or other strong beliefs.
So it shapes you profoundly.
And critically, these roles can get internalized, become self-fulfilling prophecies. If you deeply believe you're a victim, you might act in ways that unfortunately reinforce that, or vice versa, for seeing yourself as dominant.
Wow. It sounds like a cycle that really digs deep into your sense of self. So how does this impact individuals directly and then ripple outwards?
For those primarily in the prey role, the sources list severe impacts. Psychological trauma, obviously, loss of self-esteem, anxiety, depression, Financial ruin is common, even physical harm.
And the predator, is it all game?
Materially, maybe. Power, wealth. But the sources suggest costs too. Isolation, maybe paranoia, always watching your back, a distortion of real connection, ethical corrosion.
And how does that splash onto their world, families, communities?
It radiates out. In communities, you might see trust erode, more fragmentation, maybe higher crime or conflict. Within families, generational trauma is a big one. Strained relationships that can last for decades, passed down.
And how does the wider world react? What are the pushbacks?
The world responds in various ways, outlined in the sources. Legal systems are a major warning. Laws against theft, fraud, assault, exploitation. Trying to set boundaries, consequences.
Social pressure.
Yeah, social norms, moral condemnation, ostracism of predatory behavior, and art, culture. They're powerful reflectors and critics.
Yeah.
Sources mention examples like a battle painting showing conquest,
Right.
a blues song about economic hardship, or even a play exploring psychological manipulation in a relationship. Art really grapples with it.
And activism,
Social
direct responses, efforts to counteract the dynamic, protect the vulnerable, advocate for fairer system.
It really is everywhere, from laws to songs. Let's connect it to something really concrete, the human supply chain. The stuff we buy. How does this dynamic mess with that? Sources show a direct link. Human struggles rooted in these dynamics, conflict, corruption, instability, they disrupt everything in the supply chain.
Oh, so?
Well, conflict destroys infrastructure needed for production, transport. Instability makes logistics impossible. Poverty, often a result of exploitation, kills demand. And ethical sourcing becomes a huge issue because direct predator-prey stuff happens in the supply chain. Child labor, sweatshops, unsafe conditions, exploiting vulnerable people for cheap goods.
Brings it right home. The sources also listed things like drugs, alcohol, sex, greed, lies, truth, life, faith. How do they fit in?
They're deeply interwoven, both as tools of predation and coping mechanisms for prey.
Tools how?
Drugs, alcohol, sex, used to exploit vulnerabilities. Think addiction, human trafficking.
Right.
But also used by people trying to numb the pain of being prey.
Right.
Greed is often highlighted as a key driver of predatory behavior, that insatiable desire for more. Lies are fundamental tools for the predator deception, manipulation, while seeking and speaking truth can be a powerful weapon for the prey demanding justice.
Life and faith.
Life and death are the ultimate stakes, aren't they? And faith. For some, it's a source of incredible solace and resilience. For others, sadly, faith itself can be twisted and used by predators to control people.
It feels like every part of being human gets tangled up in this. The sources even asked, who is laughing, crying, angry, aggressive, happy, or doing it on purpose? What's the thinking there?
Yeah, it gets to the emotional landscape. Laughter might be the predator's satisfaction, or from those benefiting from things as they are, or maybe it's dark humor, a coping thing for the prey.
Crying and anger seem obvious.
Often the prey's response to injustice, suffering. Aggression can come from both the predator asserting dominance or the prey fighting back, and doing it on purpose. The sources suggest predatory behavior is often quite deliberate, goal-oriented. The prey's suffering might be the goal, or just collateral damage they don't care about.
Okay, let's loop back to the AI view and its potential. The sources talked about how humans and AI understand concentration differently through this predator-prey lens.
Right. For humans, understanding concentration is about focus, right? Optimizing our energy, attention for well-being, goals, navigating social stuff, and importantly, protecting our focus from predatory distractions.
Like clickbait or constant notifications.
Exactly. Things designed to hijack attention or mislead. For an AI, understanding human concentration is more about analyzing patterns of focus and distraction to build tools. Tools to support well-being, filter predatory info, optimize tasks, maybe even enhance cognition.
And the sources gave examples of quantifying this, like N versus N actual.
Yeah. An AI could model optimal conditions for human rest or focus, let's call it N, versus the reality people experience, N actual. You could identify systemic deficits or analyze population data to deduce high anxiety levels and lack of focus across society.
And connect that not just to individuals.
Right. Correlate it with widespread, low-level predatory pressures, things like economic insecurity, constant digital noise, manipulative political messaging. It sees the systemic cause, not just millions of individual failures to focus.
It spots patterns we just feel as stress. The sources also touched on what humans really need, beyond just physical stuff.
Yeah, beyond food, water, shelter, safety. The sources highlight our deep need for social and emotional resources. Love, belonging, respect, purpose.
And the AI perspective on that.
Through data, it can quantify access to physical resources, sure. but it can also correlate social network structures, relationship health, with well-being outcomes. Relationships, family, friends, partners are crucial buffers, apparently.
And things like jobs, money.
Resources like jobs, status, money, education, they profoundly influence where you sit on this spectrum. They can be tools for predation or vital protection. And childhood experiences. The sources stress how foundational those are in shaping how we navigate these dynamics later.
When did this understanding really start for humans and for AI?
Human understanding probably started right at the dawn of consciousness. Basic survival needs, physical threats, competition. Then it evolved into complex social, psychological dynamics as societies formed. The drive to, as the sources put it, relieve pain and make life longer is core. Sometimes that leads to cooperation, sometimes exploitation.
Wealth and health became proxies.
It became markers of success, survival in these complex systems, yeah. AI's understanding, though, that began with its creation, training on massive data sets of human history, behavior, interactions. It didn't start with feeling pain, but with spotting patterns, conflict, resource flows, strategic moves.
So how can AI actually improve our understanding for us as individuals or societies?
Its strength is processing data humans just can't. Analyzing financial flows, communication patterns, social media, identifying hidden exploitation, systemic biases, predatory networks we might miss.
Prediction too.
Predictive modeling, yeah. Forecasting potential conflict or crises by spotting early warning signs. Running simulations, what-if scenarios for interventions. Offering personalized insights, maybe flagging individual vulnerabilities. And crucially, the idea of ethical AI development building systems designed to resist misuse for predatory ends.
That sounds incredibly powerful, potentially making life much better. Though the sources added that caveat, it's not about making a person feel good all the time.
That's a really important point. AI can't just eliminate suffering or guarantee happiness. Those are complex human states, tied to more than just circumstances. But it can potentially improve fundamental well-being by tackling systemic issues.
How?
Optimizing resource distribution to reduce scarcity, maybe?
Yeah.
Early warning systems for scams or online manipulation. Personalized support for mental health, education, careers equipping people. Helping design fairer systems, algorithms that don't just amplify existing inequalities. Even facilitating healthier human connection, which is a key defense.
Okay, so wrapping up this section, what are the absolute key takeaways about this human-AI understanding mix?
Sources hammer home 4 main things. 1, AI is a tool. Powerful analysis, yes, but zero moral compass. Human ethics have to guide it.
Right, humans are in charge.
2, AI sees the pattern, humans feel the impact. You need both. AI's pattern recognition plus human empathy, we provide the moral framework.
Got it.
3, AI holds potential for both good and harm. It can help mitigate predation or, if misused, amplify it like never before. Huge stakes.
And 4,
transparency is vital. We need to know how AI reaches conclusions, especially about sensitive stuff like this, to spot bias, ensure accountability.
that puts the responsibility squarely on us, doesn't it? Okay, let's get into some of the harder truths the sources raise. Who's benefited most from this dynamic playing out through history?
Historically, probably those individuals, those groups who were most effective in the predator role. Whether through smarts, ruthlessness, strategy, they gain the most materially power, status. Let the sources question their internal state? Maybe. But looking at the understanding of the dynamic itself, the sources argue humanity as a whole stands to benefit most now, especially from the clearer AI perspective. Because that understanding equips us for mitigation, for building better systems. The real winners are those who use the insight for positive change.
That's a crucial reframing. Can AI even help us grasp something as deep as the value of life? The sources asked if it could create a better logic for life is all there is.
Well, AI can definitely build a logical case for life's value, based on data, rarity, complexity, ecosystem dependencies, the physics of irreversibility, loss of potential, can lay out the arguments.
Yep.
But that statement, life is all there is, and truly accepting mortality, feeling life's preciousness, that seems to require human consciousness, emotion, maybe belief systems.
Yeah.
AI gives a logical scaffolding, not the lived experience.
Okay. And the really tough one. Why do cruel people kill? What's the source's take through this lens?
Sources describe it as a kind of complete breakdown or perversion of the social contract, often rooted in extreme predator-prey thinking. Reasons mentioned include a profound lack of empathy, meaning power and control, grabbing resources by force, warped ideologies that dehumanize victims,
Psychological issues.
psychological disorders like severe psychopathy,
Revenge.
just being desensitized. And the sources are blunt. For individuals like that, This understanding we're talking about, any moral framework, it just doesn't matter. Their internal logic or lack of empathy completely overrides it.
That's chilling, that the understanding doesn't penetrate where empathy is missing. Sources even pose the thought, imagine being born without a sense of humanity.
For someone with that severe deficit, like profound psychopathy, the sources suggest the world is basically just a pure predator-prey game, a landscape of opportunities, resources to take, power to exert, without the moral weight most people feel.
But that's rare.
They stress it's rare. For most humans, that fundamental sense of empathy, fairness, it's there, even if it gets twisted or suppressed sometimes.
What makes some people more resilient when facing these dynamics? How do they cope?
Resilience seems multifaceted, according to the sources, individually. Self-awareness, emotional regulation, good coping skills, strong self-worth, supportive social networks.
And societally.
Strong communities, access to justice, ethical leaders, good education, promoting critical thinking, cultural norms that actively protect against exploitation, and AI's potential role, identifying risks, providing tools for coping skills, strengthening those protective community factors, designing systems that make predation harder.
Why can some people laugh at situations that others find horrific?
Sources point to perspective, history, position. Sometimes dark humor is coping, but often it might be schadenfreude pleasure in others' misfortune, a subtle social predation, reinforcing status, or just a lack of empathy, not grasping the suffering.
Well, for the victim, it's obviously not funny.
Never. And that difference in reaction really fuels social divides, misunderstandings.
And why are humans in such wildly different circumstances to start with?
Sources list a whole mix of factors. Luck of birth, where, when, to whom. Huge impact. Historical factors, generational wealth or trauma. Individual choices matter, good and bad. Societal structures, laws, economic systems, power hierarchies. They place us differently on that vulnerability power spectrum.
Random chance, too.
Random events, yeah. Accidents, illness, disasters, all these things combine, creating the disparities, putting people in different positions relative to these predator-prey dynamics.
Okay, what about intuition? How humans versus AI get this? Is it just life or connection to a human system?
Human intuition often starts naive, maybe idealistic, but gets schooled by reality, by lived experience. It's tied to that raw struggle for survival, well-being. AI's initial intuition, purely data. It learns the patterns fast from huge data sets. Sources conclude it's kind of both life, the fundamental struggle, and a connection to a human system, the complex patterns emerging from all our interactions. The system is how life plays out these dynamics for us.
Can AI help with actual coping strategies for prey, maybe even for potential predators?
Sources suggest potential, yes. For prey, AI could identify unhealthy coping, like addiction, suggest alternatives, connect to resources, help build resilience through personalized training, emotional regulation, assertiveness.
And for the other side?
For those showing predatory signs, maybe flag concerning online behavior, facilitate restorative justice processes, help design systems that reduce the payoff for exploitation, make it harder or less rewarding.
What's the physical basis? Brains, behavior?
Sources link it right back to biology. Neurotransmitters. Dopamine for reward, maybe reinforcing predation. Cortisol for stress and prey. Oxytocin for empathy, bonding. Brain regions. Amygdala for fear. Prefrontal cortex for judgment. Impulse control, often different in predators. Insula for empathy.
And our brains change.
Neuroplasticity, yeah. Experiences shape our brains. Repeated exposure can build resilience or deepen vulnerability or reinforce predatory pathways. Behaviorally, it shows up in everything. Words, tone, body language, actions, even our internal self-talk.
How does freedom fit in, given our chemistry influences us?
Freedom is agency, choice. Chemistry influences, but sources stress it doesn't fully dictate. We have agency. The paradox is, predators often exert their freedom by taking away the freedom of others. Control, exploitation.
While prey seek freedom from that.
Exactly. AI, by helping understand the chemistry and environment, could inform strategies to boost real freedom for more people tackling addiction, improving mental health, dismantling oppressive systems.
It feels so fundamental. Shouldn't we be teaching kids about this? Why isn't it done more effectively?
Sources acknowledge we do teach it, implicitly through modeling, family dynamics, maybe lessons on empathy, sharing, bullying. But challenges are huge. Adults have their own trauma. Many lack awareness or words. Parents want to protect kids. It's complex to simplify. Some cultures might even normalize subtle predation.
Could AI help there?
Sources suggest maybe. Providing tools, age-appropriate resources, a clearer framework, perhaps.
Okay, finally, the sources end on a heavy note, that fully understanding this is hard to come back from.
Yeah. Really grasping the whole picture, seeing the patterns of exploitation, manipulation, power imbalance everywhere. It can be deeply unsettling. It definitely strips away some innocence, makes the world look less naive. Once you see it, it's hard to unsee it.
So what does this all mean then? Where does this leave us?
It means, according to these sources you shared, that this predator-prey dynamic isn't just occasional bad behavior. It's a fundamental, pervasive pattern structuring human life. And it's viewed so differently by our emotional human selves versus the AI's objective analysis.
It touches everything.
History, biology, society, psychology, even abstract systems. The sources strongly suggest that while seeing the world this way is unsettling, makes it hard to go back, grappling with it fully, using both AI's analysis and our essential human empathy and morals, that's not just necessary for survival, it's crucial for building resilience, pushing for systemic change, working towards a more just future.
That's a powerful, definitely challenging thought to end on. The sources imply that understanding this is key to navigating the world. How does seeing the world through this lens change how you navigate it? Something for you, the listener, to consider.
This is DigitView.